Well, I just got dissatisfied with the company. I'd been busted to private. I didn't think I should have been.
How did that happen?
Well, it's getting a bit personal now, but I offered assault to an officer. Well, the scout in front of me, you know, he was ripped to bits. I was ripped to bits. And I just went back and threw me webbing down and said, no. I said, you're a so-and-so. And then I said I should shoot you, you know, you can't lead men. I still reckon that the nun in the street shot at about 5 o'clock in the morning in Datdo with specks of blood on her forehead made me assured that I was doing the right thing, because that's what they were doing to nuns. I'm not a Catholic, but she was trying to do a job and she was shot.
Did you see any
So,
atrocities?
no regrets. I haven't done that much in my career, really. I've got no military medals. I've got no mention in dispatches. I was no hero. I did my best. I was there. I commanded men. I didn't get any killed. So I reckon fair enough. That's all I can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill, if you could start off and give us a bit of a life summary.
Certainly. Good morning. My name is Bill Parry. I was christened Winston Oliver Parry. I was born in August 1944 on a little farm about 33 miles northwest of Toowoomba, an area called Mount Darry. And when I turned 17, I joined the military. I joined the Army. My first preference was the Royal Australian Navy, but I approached them when I was 16 and a half, and they told me to go away. So I don't know why, but I come to the Army. During my Army service, I was allocated to the Royal Australian Infantry, which I wanted, and at that time in 1962, it was fairly difficult to get the infantry. They didn't want any, but I got it. I was only 2 in the platoon that got it. And I had various postings to battalions of the Royal Australian Regiment in the Army. I started off in Enoggera. I went to Borneo in Malaysia. Actually, I went to Malaya, as it was called that time, in 1963. And I didn't come back until the end of 1965, almost 66. In that period, I had done active service in Borneo, in Sarawak, Borneo, against the Indonesians in the confrontation. Since then, it is now classed as active service in the Malaya area too. So that happened later. We did see some there. From there, I returned to Australia. I got married in 1966. I then was back. I went to Vietnam in 1967, in May 67, with the 2nd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. Came back from there and came back to Enoggera, joined the 8th Battalion, went back to Vietnam in 1969. And when I came home in 1970, or near 71, I tried to get back again, and the war sort of stopped for us. They didn't send anyone over in quantities again. So from that time I did all sorts of postings in the Army, mostly battalions, infantry battalions, up until 1976. I was selected for the first recruiting unit in Brisbane, and I had a wonderful 2 years of travelling around Queensland, talking to children about the regular army and getting them into the regular army. I enjoyed it tremendously. It gave me some paperwork skills, and it also gave me the skills of interacting with people, which you sort of become out of touch with in the army in the main. After recruiting, I went to an instructional unit, training corporals to be sergeants. After that, I went to reserve on promotion to warrant officer in Lismore, then to Townsville as a company sergeant major, and then from Townsville I went to Kapuka. Was discharged from the regular army in 1986, the rank of Warrant Officer Class 2. After about a few months, I joined the Emergency Reserve, and I did it at a time when they wanted people. So actually from 1986 to 97, I was recalled and I did full-time service and working on what they call a D40, I think it is. And I worked with the Army virtually with a few other security jobs to boot right up until 1997. So in 1997, I suffered my health was breaking down, and I suffered a blood clot, and I was discharged from the reserve forces. So that's about entails my military life.
So coming home from Borneo, Malaya and that sort of thing, did you have an idea on what you would be doing in the near future with the Army?
Well, yeah, we knew we were going to go to Vietnam because that we knew straight away what battalion we were going to, and we were going to go to Vietnam. That was it.
So as soon as you got back to Australia, you knew?
Oh, we knew before. Yeah, we didn't know when, but whatever battalion you were sent to dictated when they were going. You know, so we knew that if you went to 7 or 2 battalion, you were going to go about May 67. Sorry. So you had a couple of years. Oh, you could have asked to go earlier, but most of those battalions were in place and training, see. Takes a year. The Australian Army used to train them a year before they went, you know. Nationals too, national servicemen as well.
So you went over on the Sydney?
Yes, went over on the HMAS Sydney.
And what did they tell you about the enemy?
Oh, well, there's a lot of things, you know, that you don't know, like formations of signs. Every soldier, army in the world, if they put booby traps out and that, must mark it for themselves so that they don't trip them or go into them. So there was rock formations, there was broken sticks, wood pointing directions, car tyres, things like that, bamboo tied back, things like that for us to watch for that indicated that there was something up there. And they did that because their own people had to travel those tracks. So we learnt all that. Yeah.
So you were off the ship and in a Nui Dat the same day?
Yes, oh yeah. Nui Dat, I think, was about 40 kilometres from Vung Tau. I'm not 100% sure. I don't go into that sort of thing, but it was about that. About an hour and a half, I think, 2 hours.
And what were your first impressions of Vietnam?
Oh, it's a nice country. It's very picturesque, you know, but yeah, it's a bit like Thailand. It's not like Malaya or Malaysia or the Philippines. It's more like Thailand, but yeah, open paddy fields, hills, not a lot of hills in some areas. Yeah, but a lot of hills in other areas, you know.
So what were your initial responsibilities? Was it just looking after your section, or?
Yeah, we just wholly and solely worked, you know, did platoon work. And of course in Nui Dat, because it's a base where they were almost hit the 18th of August and we went in November, and that was Long Tan, we relieved those mob, that 6 RER. Obviously, you know, you've got to have a lot of work on the perimeter, and the whole base requires a lot of people on duty of a night. So when you're not on operations, you are guarding the place.
So what was your impression of Nui Dat when you first got there?
No, nothing outstanding, but I think I didn't expect it to be as you know, as comfortable as what it was. There was some hard standing buildings. We lived in tents, but everything was fairly well organised. But that was the first time I went. We only had 2 battalions in there. The 3rd battalion moved in while we were there. They had to build their own camp, like that one probably would have been built by 5 RER, and they had to work hard, very hard. They were working until midnight some nights, digging in.
So can you remember that first day? Like what happened when you first arrived there? Were you given a tour of the area or
No tours.
just
But you found out there wasn't much time for tours because we had, the security to worry about. But we were told, where things were, and but I don't remember going for a tour, and that was on the both trips. I can't remember that.
so any sort of period of acclimatisation would have just been digging in and securing a position,
No,
was it?
we didn't have to dig in. It was all built for us.
You didn't have to do any other work?
No, not until later, till the company commander decided it was no good for him, and he wanted to change it all. 6 RER, he wanted to be his own boss, so he worked us to death. But that didn't happen on my second tour. They just did their job. That depends on individual company commanders and whether they want to gain points or whatever they do it for. I don't know. It certainly doesn't win them in.
So what sort of settling in period did you have before you were sort of turned around and sent on operations and stuff?
We were lucky because what you do orientation training. Actually, we did. You get some demonstrations, and one of the demonstrations was chopper fire, which went horribly wrong. It was an American gunships were showing us the, how they brought fire in. Well, I don't know who was in fault. I'm not an American knocker. I think they're as good as anyone else, but we all make mistakes. I don't know whether the Australians put the machine gun in the wrong place or the troops. It wasn't our company, it was another company, or whether the American come in wrong. The Australian, they say it was the American. I don't know, but they would do that anyway. Any side would blame the other. But the gunships come in and strafed one of the platoons of D Company 2 RER, and there was about 3 killed and 9 wounded, because we went out and got the rifles later. That was a tragic thing. We also were given an artillery lesson, which nearly went wrong in my case on the second tour. They sent me up because I'd been there before, and it was for NCOs, and I was a corporal on the second tour. They sent me and my section up to be a standing patrol so that everything could be done there non-tactical. And I was up with my section, and the artillery started to come in, to show us. Well, they knew I knew. And I heard the first round, it was coming near us. I could tell it was coming in on us. So I got my troops up and I moved them about 300 metres back, and it hit where we were. I just got them back in time. Maybe we covered about 100 metres, but with artillery fire it all goes to the front, so we were lucky. And they thought we were hit. They were bringing up the stretchers, so it went horribly wrong. And that afternoon we went over and had a look at the gun position, New Zealand gun, and they are very good gunners. And something had happened. They had some sort of slippage on the guns. And that nearly went horribly wrong too. So I didn't like these acclimatisation things very much. But
There's some intro to Vietnam with the helicopter incident. Must have put the wind up a lot of fellas, did it?
well, no one sort of talks about those sort of things. We just carried on. It's that busy, and you're being told so much and getting orders groups and all that. You don't think about what happened. If you was to think about every time you put your foot down outside the wire you'd be tripping on a mine, you'd be a nutcase in about 3 weeks. So you sort of, we sort of handle that. I can't remember anyone being completely scared and not moving. But, it's, going back to the orientation, they send you out on a tail patrol, which is about 1,000 metres out, 2,000 metres, and they acclimatise you to the area around the base. And in about 2 weeks we were going on operation. It would have been less. Maybe 10 days we were out on an operation, our first operation. That would have been on both cases. They haven't got the time to just let you have 2 months to check. You know, the other battalion wants a spell. And there was usually 1 in and 2 out. So, you know, you were busy. Yeah.
Can you explain the setup at Newey with your guys? Was it like with Newey base was all around defence with everyone tying in with someone
Yes.
next door? Who was next door to you guys?
Well, we had our companies. And basically what happens, in between the companies, there's barbed wire. So that if the enemy get into one company, they can't get through to another company. So you're really on your own. You're isolated, but your guns tie in with the other companies. And it's not long before you find a hole in the wire where you can go and get, if your company don't give enough beer, well, you can, usually the other company are a bit better. So, you know, we soon got our holes, but everything's built irregular, as you know, that if you walk that way, you got to walk that way and this way to get in. But they didn't have any of that. There was nothing between companies, only what we made. You know, holes. But, or come in the front way.
So do you know who was either side of,
Oh, yeah.
2RER?
Oh yeah, there was, I think it was, we were B company, A company was on our left, and I think C company was on our right. Yeah. In 8RER it was, D was on our right, and I think I was A company then. But that was a different area. Yeah. B was on our left, I think. Yeah.
What about stand 2 and clearing patrols and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, it become a bit of a everybody got so used to it, you know. There was a track around that base, and I really didn't like it. And if I would have been the enemy, I would have cleaned up a few people. I'd have mined those tracks, but they couldn't have got too far in to do that. Although they used to probe around us. But when I did my clearing patrol, I used to get them out of that down into the rubber and that, because I didn't like the way towards the end, you know, people just belted around it to get it over, you know. But that wasn't always the case. You know, I'm not saying that this was done everywhere. Usually everything in Vietnam was done very well.
And when was stand 2 done?
Oh, last light, whatever it was at the time.
Was it a quick nightfall?
Yeah, fairly quick. Long shadow, long evenings, but then bang, yeah. But this sort of changed through the seasons.
So what season was it when you got there?
I think it was monsoon when we got there, that first time. I'm not sure.
Had you experienced similar conditions in Malaya, Borneo?
Yeah, same thing. Rain comes in the afternoon about 4, and you get wet, and then later on it stops for the night. Yeah, monsoons are a bit different. It can rain at irregular periods. Yeah, but it peters out, the same in the Philippines, and then you get your storms every day, like we've been getting them here. And then after that, it's gone. But in the monsoons, it can rain all night on you, you know. But the conditions over there are so warm that you dry it out pretty well, you know.
What did that do to the earth there? Because it's pretty red soil there, isn't it?
Yeah, mostly red soil. Yeah, it wasn't too nice, but in the camp it was sort of, as I say, it was an established camp, so they had pretty hard tracks and that, but sometimes cemented, but that wasn't a big problem. Sometimes dirt on your boots, but yeah, there was, yeah. But in the bush, really, in the jungle, it's, you know, you don't get dirt on you because no one travels through it much, you know.
What sort of natural cover did you have there in your area?
Oh, in the base camp?
At Newey?
Rubber. Rubber and bananas. Rubber in the first company. Bananas and rubber. But mostly bananas in the other. More clearer. Bit of rubber, I think. Yeah.
Blokes help themselves to the bananas?
Oh, yeah, sort of. I don't know. Maybe. Wasn't a big deal.
So you said you were within first 10 days you're out on an operation. What was that?
Well, we were out for more earlier than that. We were on this close sort of operation, sleeping out in ambush, and straight away virtually in 2 days. But we went out on a big op as a part of an operation about 10 days later, I'd say. maybe 15 days, maybe less.
How long from when you got to New Idat was your first contact with the enemy?
Oh, it's a long time now, but it would have been in Tuaria. We didn't get too much in our company. There was a couple, but sometimes there was other platoons. I think we had one, but he, just a glimpse and a bang and gone. And we found a lot of enemy villages. We had to burn them. We had to backload the rice first. It was a lot of that. It wasn't like, I thought it'd be action all the time, but it wasn't. War was a lot of, a lot of work and a lot of frustration, really. It's not all bang, 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 You might search, you might see them, they might run away. You might ambush for nights on end and get nothing. It's 8 RER was quicker. We got quicker things done there. We had a contact quicker than that. It depends,
Were you making comparisons between your previous overseas service?
Well, there was no comparison with the 3rd Battalion and the 2nd Battalion in that area, because it's, it was a different setup in Malaya because we knew each other. We were sort of all cooperating, and we're in company lots. There we're in a big, this is in the field, I'm talking about in Malaya, where we come to a big operation and run by the task force, and we were just a part of it. So it was a different type of setup than over there. It was much bigger and much more going on. It was different.
Do particular incidences stand out in your mind on your first tour of Vietnam?
Oh, yeah, there was quite a few, but the one that stands out in my mind that I would talk about was the we're in this. We were all going back from a 30-day operation, and it was right up in the bad part, and there was enemy around, Anyway, the engineers were flown back to New Idat. Everyone was flown back. The pioneers, everyone gone. And there was an Australian artillery complex, their guns and everything, and they dig in like we do and sleep underground. And there was no one to blow it up. So somewhere along the line they said, "You've been a pioneer." Remember I said I said, "Yes, but I'm not qualified. I can blow things up, but only not in a ring main covering about 400 metres. A ring main is one bang and they all blow up. I didn't have enough knowledge." And they said, "Well, you're the only one that we can use." So it didn't matter whether I was qualified or not. This is how peace and war changes, They won't even let them blow a claymore now. And I said, "Oh, I'll have a go, but, you'll have to bear with me. I can only blow about 6 up at a time, So they threw me more plastic explosives, and it would have blown New Idat up, what they threw me. Bags and boxes of it, Must have been thousands of dollars. Anyway, away I went, blowing these bunkers up by 6s, 3s, whatever I could get my hands on. And consequently because there was choppers leaving and that, I had to stop, see. You can't blow when there's a chopper leaving. So it was real hard, but I had them all wired up. I had everything in. That took me about 4 hours. Anyway, the darkness come, I'd got a couple blows up. And then they said, "Right, we're going." So my company just left me. Now the CSM helped me, the company sergeant major, before he left, but he had to go with his company. They were going home. So here I am, on my own. So no one. And I'm running around blowing up, and there's the ridges going up, and I'm getting it all over me. It's thirsty. No one around. Anyway, the next minute an armoured personnel carrier roared out. It was Summer 7 Battalion, the battalion I was in Victoria that was over there, a little bit before us. And this Armoured Corps officer, young guy, said, "Get in." And I said, "No, I can't get in. I've got all these pets wired." I said, "Look, I got thousands of, that can't leave." He said, "If you don't get in," he said, "I'll leave you." And I said, "Well, you'll have to leave me because I can't leave this." Anyway, the infantry CSM said, "Hey, hang on." He said, "How many men do you need?" I said, "Give me one good one," not the officer. So away we went, and we just run in clockwise and lit. I showed him what I wanted, and we just run along, blowing them up. And the time they had us on the APCs moving out, and that whole ridge was going. She all went up. So I got my job done just before dark. And that was one thing that they put on me, and I did get a thank you over the radio from my battalion, saying you did a good job.
What was going through your mind when everybody buggers off and leaves you?
Well, I didn't think it could happen until that young officer said, "Well, we'll leave you." And I said, "Well, I'll have to stay because I got all this." I said, "You want to give it to the VC, do you?" But I think he was fair dinkum. And the company sergeant major pulled him into gear, the warrant officer, and said, "You can't do this. Get on your radio and tell them we're going to be a bit late." So something like the bus driver leaving the kid out down near Canunga on her own. So some people are like that. They follow orders without it even thinking. But thank God the CSM said, no, you're not doing it. But that was one thing that stands out in my mind. I guess that wasn't a good trip. We were worked very hard, and the morale was bad in the company.
What was that?
We were only allowed 2 cans of beer a day in camp. We were worked. The company commander made us do all the camp up. The pits that 6 RER left were not good enough, so we had to redo them. The tents were no good. We had to move them closer to the wire where we'd have been shot. They made them like Boy Scouts tents. And I'll never forget that. There wasn't many highlights in that tour, believe you me. I got R&R back to Australia. My daughter had been born by that stage. It wasn't a high morale trip. It nearly ruined me, actually. I got busted from corporal in that. But when I went back again, I went back with 8th Battalion. Now, I'm saying it was a good battalion, 2 battalion. That wasn't an over battalion thing. It was only seemed to be us for some reason. But it's a part of leadership. But that was the man's idea on leadership. Some are like that, some aren't. You always get one like him in every battalion. So and he was never pulled into gear. But I think later on, I left a couple of months earlier. I got out. I'd had enough, and I come back, and that was a couple of months earlier. So I think it got better. They really had a lot of casualties in that company later.
How long after your daughter was born did you actually find out?
Oh, well, that was pretty well done. They told me in the field. It'd come over the radio. So that was pretty well done. Yeah. But the next battalion I went over with were different. It was a different atmosphere. But then again, bear in mind that it was later in the piece. It was 69, November 69. Things had got better. We'd got another task force commander who was as good soldier's man, and things had changed. There was better ideas that come with time and experience, and we were sort of treated much better. We didn't have to rebuild the camp. He didn't do that to us. So, everything was better.
Was Neweydat mortared at all while you were there?
Not while I was there. It was mortared when 6 RER were there. Actually, some of 6 RER, that first tour, 66, I think they were there 66, 67, they were mortared. A few blokes got killed in that camp by mortar fire, I'm led to believe. Then, of course, the enemy were going to attack, and the D Company 6 RAR held them back. So everything up until then would have been after this. When we were there, we had a few probes on the perimeter, but no one ever got mortared. But we had seen evidence of base plates set up outside. So, you know, probably our standing patrols. I think the onslaught by D Company 6 RAR made it a lot more comfortable for us right through, because they weren't going to try again. So I think we have D Company. We have 6 RAR, not only D Company. There was other companies involved. I think we have 6 RAR to thank for that. That they didn't sort of get too much.
How soon after Longtown did that information filter down to you guys about what had happened?
Oh, we knew it happened back here.
Straight away?
Before we left. Oh, yeah. That was on TV straight away, wasn't it? TV coverage was high then. It was something like the Iraqi War. TV. It was big time. You'd see it on the TV every night.
Because we nicknamed the first television war. Did you ever see correspondence, news teams and things like that around?
Oh, yes. We had them all the time. I can't remember with 2 RAR much. I don't think we had too many. But we had, on our trip with 8, we had a guy from Brisbane here, a bloke with the name, I think it was Gibbons. And he was with the company all the time. He was a civilian. Yeah, he had years there. He was that good he was giving the company commander advice. Because he knew, you know. He used to stay with the company commander. We were always pleased to have him. We had a good company commander who was ex-Special Forces anyway and had been there before in the training team. But this guy was always welcome because he was up there with us, you know. He used to wear a beard and his name was Gibbons, I think. But I can't really remember. Yeah. He used to chat with us, take photos of us. Yeah. Yeah, we had a lot. Used to come out with us for a few days, but he used to travel pretty well all the time with us, you know.
Can you remember the first shot fired in anger when you did your first tour?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there was so many incidents. In our platoon, sentries were shot at, sentries were running in, you know. Yeah, I can't specifically name it, but, you know, you don't sort of worry too much. It's not a big deal, you know. It's sort of, you know, you trudge around so much and nothing happens, you know. Yeah.
How had the equipment changed from your time in Malaya and Borneo to Vietnam?
Second tour, the first tour, our packs were, would you believe, World War II. So the first thing we did when we got in country was buy the Vietnamese army packs with pockets on them. It all changed a bit with 8 RAR because we were there later and we had better packs. Not much better, but Australian packs with pockets at least. Small, but not as good as the British. But, you know, a bit better than the Arvin ones and carry a bit more. But remember, see, you don't carry much food. You might have 10 days rations, but you don't put it all in. You throw most of it away. You know? Do you want the fan there? It's very hot, isn't it?
It is really
Yeah.
hot.
You throw most of it away, so you just travel on 1 meal a day and plenty of brews, you know. So, but the weight and the problem with the weight is the things you've got to carry. You know, you've got to carry claymore mines. You know, like we're in an ambushing mode in 8 RAR, so we carried maybe 6 to 7 claymore mines in the section. They're you know, they're fairly heavy. Trip flares, det cords for the claymores, they'd take up a lot. Then you've got your grenades. Then you've got your ammunition. You know, and there's other things I've probably forgot. markers for the choppers. Oh, that's right, smoke grenades, they're heavy. And you had all these, you had to divide out in the section. So, and sections weren't always 9 men. Some sections were 7 because someone was out sick or perhaps wounded. So, sometimes you were travelling with 6 men, 5 men sometimes. You had nothing. And if a bloke got wounded, you had to they wouldn't take the ammunition back. You inherited all of his stuff because the chopper wouldn't take it. Well, you don't blame them. They just took the body and his rifle. So you inherited all his ammunition,
What was the minimum strength that you would go out on operations in?
Oh, well, it varied. With 2RAR, because Long Tan was just ended, we used to go out battalion operations, work as a company. If the platoons moved away, they'd only be a little bit away. 8RAR was different. We'd go out as companies, sometimes on our own. Sometimes we'd send the platoons out. It was a little bit, more tactically suited to being further away from the main. But we always were close enough to have some reaction. I have gone on sort of quick patrols for 2 or 3 hours with 3 men in 8RAR. I think that was a little bit hairy when I look back on it, but never in 2. But we used to tinker around with those sort of things in 8 a bit. If we were on, say, if we had a platoon in harbour position, we would send little patrols out. Because the tactical situation they know what it's like in the area, pretty well.
What about listening posts?
Yeah, well, we had those too.
Would that be one bloke on his own?
Oh, no. No, never one bloke on his own, no. Even on sentry of a night, never. Always 2. And, the good section commander would let the fresh bloke rest and the other bloke stay awake, and then he'd tap the other bloke if anything happened. Oh, if there was noise coming, you'd always have that other bloke to wake up and say, what do you think it is? Most blokes just sat. One rested but just watched. The other one was full on. Oh, no, never one. I can't. In Borneo we used to, but I can never see in Vietnam anyone ever doing it on their own.
You mentioned earlier that ambushes were conducted differently in Vietnam to the way they were in Borneo and that?
Yes, they were. Borneo, we was sort of the same, but we got more smart over there because of the reaction of the enemy. Now, a VC enemy, what they used to do, and not all the time, but they used to try to roll you up on the flanks. So most of our ambushes were what they call triangle ambushes, where you'd have a triangle with your 3 guns, one in front and the other at the back, and one in a better position, another position, and you'd have claymore mines interlocked all around you, so that if you were hit in one area, if they flanked you, you could blow the claymores in the other area, and you had all around defence, and we'd tighten up,
Is that what strength is an ambush conducted in?
Well, usually platoon. Yeah, we didn't try section ambushes. Standard patrols might have been done by sections, but I think to a minimum. We were pretty careful on that tour because, it was just after Long Tan.
So was it quite noticeable, this sort of edginess after Long Tan that you guys were under? Like, from a higher thing, I mean, when they're obviously very careful about what you guys were doing.
It was just the way that they worked. Obviously, the commanders weren't going to risk platoons out on their own with all these forces that could have been around. They were still careful in on that second tour too, but things had changed to small enemy groups in a lot of places, so we did a lot of ambushing in platoons and that sort of thing, Things had changed. We learnt a lot, but our ambushes were very good. We learnt the art of ambushing from SAS, SAS had a big influence in 8RER's ambushes. They were much better than the ones we did in 2RER. They were really spot on because the SAS come over and taught us in the early days, and we were really good at ambushing. And you know, like our flares, different type, the way we set our flares up, you know, on loose pulls was the best. The other way, with a tight pull, it meant that if it went that way from the wind, it'd go off. Though they were no good, and that was the way we were doing it in 2RER for a while anyway. And that's the way they taught us at Canungrus, eh?
So, what was essentially the difference between the ambushes that you're doing 2RER to 8RER?
They probably weren't as good. The art of ambushing, I'm not saying all companies, but some were, you know. I'm just saying some of the ambushes we were in, we did it different in 8RER. You know, we were more smarter with claymores and setting up. But that might be only my company. I don't know. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, because there was a lot of good soldiers in 2 Battalion too. But I noticed the difference in 8. I thought it was much better, because the SAS didn't teach us in 2, but they taught us in 8.
When you first got there with 2, where was SAS based at Neweydat?
They were always on SAS Hill. There's a bit of a hill in the middle of the camp, and that's where they were. They've always been there. I think there was an ordnance depot up there, or an ordnance unit up there too. Yeah, with all the ammo and that.
And what was the general sort of thinking amongst the infantry guys about the SAS?
Oh, and we had no... We liked them because they used to do our... before you went on a landing to an operation in choppers, well, you know, if they had the SAS, they were always in and had the area checked out for us to see, you know, make sure we didn't land in a hot LZ, as they used to call it. Yeah, no, they were well thought of. SAS have never been any otherwise in my book. There's been a few stories, you know, jealous infantrymen have said about them, but I think they're pretty fruitless myself. I've never had any but good praise for them, you know, myself.
What about helicopter operations?
Yep.
How many of them?
Most of it. First trip was, we used to work with the American Robin Hoods, and they would come down and they'd lift a company at a time from Neweydat, put it down wherever they could. Very efficient, very good. We bear in mind, in that era, the RAAF hours were not in abundance over there. With 8RER, our Air Force had more choppers, and they were less touchy about whether they heard them or not, and they were very good. But the Air Force always handled the SAS. Our Air Force always, well, in most cases that I'm told, always put them in, and they were very good too, you know. Everyone was pretty spot on. But the Americans were more flexible, I thought, but that's only from my opinion. But I learnt more about that later on in my second tour when I left the battalion and went to a training team.
Had you done much training in Australia before going to Vietnam in regards to helicopters and learning how to do that?
Yeah, we did everything. We did bringing in fire, artillery, corporals could do that, and even good privates could do that. We were taught helicopter drills, we were taught all about safety of them, what to do if they crashed. You know, as much as they could. Everything was covered. Everything.
What was it like to go in anywhere, company strength in Iroquois?
Well, it was, if you'd had time to look at it and film it, it would have looked good. Because, you know, I've seen them put them down. I reckon there would have been, the company would have almost come in together, maybe split a bit. Very, you know, dynamic. It was. You know, it was like the Americans do things, you know, big, plenty of logistics. Yeah. But We did use armoured personnel carriers a lot too, and they were very good. Magic. And they were used as well as helicopters, you know. Tanks were used, but I only got to work with them once briefly. They did their job, but they could only go to certain places because they couldn't get through the jungle, you know. But armoured personnel carriers get through pretty well.
What were your main concerns when you would go out anywhere? Was there ever...
Personally,
Yeah.
I didn't like mines, but, you know, you had to live with it. I was always make sure, you know, if I was on small tracks and that, and we're the lead section, make sure your scout was, you know, current with all the you know, booby trap signs. More so mines. I think everybody was more frightened of mines than they were of bullets, although bullets are terrible things. And these people dug in well, you know. You would, on my second or even the first tour, you would be in a bunker complex before you sort of realise that, you know, look at this. If we'd have ever been caught, well, some of the battalions were, some of the companies, but I wasn't, so I can't say I was lucky, but, you know, you must get killed. It was that well done, you know. You couldn't see a thing. It was all interlocked, you know.
And so you'd find yourself, in your case, in a bunker complex, and
Sometimes.
Fortunately it wasn't manned.
Man, sometimes.
What would happen in that situation?
Oh, well, sort of we knew. We knew we were going in because what they used to do is they would always give themselves away with chickens because they'd eat them, I suppose. Food wasn't always readily got, I suppose. They always used to have chickens around. And if you heard chickens, you knew that there was something around. And of course the mine signs, you were always hitting these trees tied back. Things like that, rolled up banana tree in some areas where there was bananas. Rocks on the ground, you know, and so we went in pretty careful. But sometimes you would, and also they used to cut the trees off. Outside their camps, they had to have timber to make their bunkers. So they would cut the trees off low, and so the choppers wouldn't see it. They'd cut them in, not all at once, all around, but in little bits, and they'd put dirt on the top of those trees so they wouldn't see the area. The recon helicopters and planes wouldn't see the shine, and you knew you were coming into something, but you know, you just had to go and search them sometimes. Sometimes we hit, you know, they were in there. And they fired at us, and we put airstrikes in on them. The normal situation was that if you hit something, most commanders pulled back, brought artillery in, mortars in, an airstrike in maybe, and then cleared. But sometimes that wasn't always, it couldn't always be done. Sometimes they'd find themselves in the middle of it, or cut off or something, and they had a fight. You know, that was the ideal situation to bring your fire support in and to save your troops on the ground, but it didn't always work that way.
Where did the Aussies get their air support from?
Americans. They were. See, our Air Force like our Air Force was choppers on the ground and that, but we used to get the Americans used to have gunships, and whenever a chopper put you in, there'd be gunships above, ready to help you out, in most cases. And if you were getting a wounded out, you'd always see a gunship around, you know, keeping look out, and they'd just dive down and strafe it, you know. I think they flew them like sabres, some of them. Our big stuff, airstrikes and that, was from the Americans, because our Air Force at Than Rang only had the bombers that went in, you know, and put the big bombs down, to my knowledge. Yeah, so, yeah, mostly American. They were very good to work with, very good. The pilots were excellent, and they would just talk to you like we're talking now. The Australians were a little bit more formal, and they wanted everything done right, but they were pretty good too. But I had a lot of experience with the Americans in the training team, and they'd just tell you, where's the fire coming at you from? How far is it away? You'd tell them, give them the grid reference you thought, and they'd just come in and do the work, Just talk to me while I do it, They're very good. Mostly they were warrant officers, young warrant officers, really young whiz kids, and they used to make them pilots and go in. They were good.
Can you tell us about going on 30-day patrol?
Yes, well, 30-day patrol was obviously you had to get resupped. They would normally, depending on where they would have to send you and how far you walked, they might give you 5 days rations or 6 days. If they wanted to put you in unseen, they might give you 10 days and send you with armoured personnel carriers with the tops down so that they didn't know you were hanging, because we used to sit on the sides of them. So sometimes they'd put us into an area quietly. You'd carry 10 days. If it was a big operation, where a lot of movement and that, Americans, other forces, they would give you 6 days rations. You would get a resup. In the old days with the 2nd Battalion, when things weren't all, where they weren't too experienced, you'd have to open the boxes, burn the boxes, separate all the stuff on the LZ with the protection around you, of course. With 8th Battalion, they took a summary of what we wanted out of the rations, put them in sandbags. 3 days in sandbags, you just picked up your sandbag. But that was later when they got more expert. They used to send cold milk, buns in with ham on them, and as a commander, you'd, or as anybody, I guess, you'd walk off with a bun in your mouth and a milk in your mouth and a rifle here. You'd get no time to eat it anyway. So, but then we'd get our mail, which was a big thing. The mail in Vietnam, which the Union stopped at one stage until our Navy delivered it, that was a big factor.
Getting back to your 30-day patrol, what was it like when you're getting towards the end of that, ready to come back into Nui Dat?
Oh, well, nothing changed. We were just, we did our job right up until the choppers landed, or the APCs took us out.
Blokes wouldn't start to switch off, getting towards the end of something like that?
This is something that I think should be clarified, and this is a good point, Peter. Switching off is, when you're in a war zone, you sort of have to switch off a bit, because if you're on 100% alert, you would probably crack. But with the switching off, you still had to sort of keep one eye out. So it was a soldier that never switched off that usually had a breakdown. Soldiers would switch off on you, and you had to sometimes be very verbose with them, but usually they switched on pretty fast when they knew they were in danger. I worked with Vietnamese on my second tour after my platoon got wiped out in the Long Highs. I was in 1 Platoon A, Company 8 RAR. We had a terrible mine contact. And I went to the Australian Army training team. And a lot of advisors used to say, look at these Vietnamese, they're switched off. Well, they were switched off at times because they lived in the country. They knew exactly the signs of what was going to come. And I'll tell you what, they weren't switched off if they thought there was enemy around. You got to learn to live with a lot of Australian soldiers say, oh, they switched off and all that sort of thing. But people switch off when they sort of know that things if you're in a perimeter and you've got sentries out, you're allowed to switch off a bit and read a letter. You know what I mean? But on sentry, no. But they were pretty good. Oh, I've seen terrible mistakes happen with people switching off, but you can't really get them to the side and punch them because they're only humans, and they're out there for 30 days and they're slogging a pack and they're getting wet and they're getting dry and they're getting wet, and you're gonna switch off. In a lot of cases, we were walking zombies because we were ambushing in the night. Ambushing 50% awake, and then the next day we'd be patrolling all day. That is a commander's really blue, but he was pushed from the CO was pushed from the brigadier, so it wasn't their personal, but on the second tour they sort of didn't do that too much. I suppose everybody learned as they went, But I know sometimes I was walking through the jungle sort of detached from it, and I was a commander. But I knew if something was out of place, But it was tiredness in a lot of cases, You were physically, some of us were physically fatigued,
Despite being so physically fatigued, would blokes still have trouble sleeping out in the bush?
Oh, I don't think many had trouble sleeping. I think the minute they were off, they didn't take their boots off, they just fell in, and it was warm, so you didn't need any blankets. You just fell down and slept under your hoochie. No, I don't think sleep was very hard. It wasn't for me.
Did you ever have blokes in the section that snored?
Yes. It was the biggest nightmare of the whole lot. I've had snorers that bad I've had to get rid of them. And in an ambush, when there's one bloke awake in a group of 4, a big snoring sound, and you're not far from where the track is or somewhere, they can hear that. Perhaps walking they might not. But yes, many people threw little rocks at them, and people woke them up. And it was something inherent. You couldn't stamp it out. You couldn't send them all to admin company to drive trucks. Yes, but bad snorers, chronic snorers, and I've seen a few after Vietnam in Australia, chronic, everybody moved on them, they had to be, something had to be done with them, and they had to be put somewhere, if you were a chronic snorer. And I didn't strike too many, but everybody snores. Yes, it was a big problem. On your back, you'll snore, no matter who you are. Even the beautiful women do.
So what was it like when you came back in? Would you be wearing the same set of greens for 30 days?
No. When you got that re-sup, you just pull your trousers off. You had protection, and you put your other ones on. No underwear. You didn't have clean underwear sent out, but you washed that in a creek. Sometimes we'd stop at a creek and put protection out and have a wash. Things like that. Not very much, but we did it. No, we always got clean greens. That stuff was thrown back in a bag, and away it went, and they got it washed. Oh, no. No, that was pretty well organised. The re-sup and all that, you'd get whatever you wanted. Boots, whatever. There was no mucking around.
How many resups on a 30-day patrol?
Maybe 3. They didn't have them all the time, but where they could, they did. Depending on what we did, you can't patrol an ambush with 10 days rations. And technically we didn't carry all our rations. We used to split it up, throw it away, but on a resup in 8-hour hour, the company quartermasters would split it up. And if you were getting 5 days rations, it'd be in one bag for one man. And they took the stuff away that we didn't want, like biscuits and things like that. But that didn't happen in the other battalion. We had to smash the cases open, and it was American rations with the other mob. And American rations are quantity and quantity, and you can never carry them. 3 days American rations would be the same quantity in ours about 7 days. because they had chicken, they had bread in cans, they had everything. And it was difficult. And it wasn't really for us in the field. We shouldn't have been getting that. And we would have to throw most of it away or leave it, you know. And then you can't leave it because they don't well, they used to backload sometimes, but we'd never get a chance to. We sometimes had to open it up and dig it and bury it. But the next time they had it all organised. And it was Australian rations, which made it easier. And they're better than... American rations are okay, but there's too much of them. Too much and not enough what we want, you know.
So what happens when you get back to Newey Dad after 30 days outfield?
Well, what should happen is that you should be able to go back, have a shower, medic would come down and check you, you know, check the soldiers in the crutch, tinea, all that sort of thing. If someone got slightly wounded, he'd have to go to the RAP and check it again. And cleaning your machine gun, everything had to be inspected, your personal weapon, the claymore mines had to be, you know, separated. If they'd been on 2 operations, we'd fire them later, not that day. We'd shower, have a brunch at the mess, and relax.
Was that a hot shower?
No, cold. No, they never had hot showers. You didn't need it over there. But with the first mob I was with the 1st Battalion, we would have an hour off and then start our sandbagging again because we had to get this camp redone that we pulled down. So there wasn't much rest on that 12 months, I tell you. But with the 8th Battalion, yeah, but the corporals never had rest. The corporals would be at orders groups with the platoon commander. The platoon commander would be always calling you in. You know, you'd live with the M16 under your arm and a pile of maps in your hand, you know. And then you had the night sentry duties to do. You'd have to man the guns on the perimeter.
Did all the NCOs have M16s, did they?
On the first trip, they had SLRs, and then they give them those F1s, which were a disappointment. They were no good. And the only NCO that carried an F1 was someone that didn't want to kill anybody because they were useless. So if you seen an NCO with an F1, you knew he didn't want to kill anybody. He was a pacifist. They ended up being used by trucks and all that, you know, people that didn't need, you know, heavy firepower. They're only a personal weapon, I think. They weren't designed for that, but that's what they are.
Was there any stage where you kind of regretted having rank? Like just the fact that you were on call 24/7?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be a soldier because I wanted to make a career of it at this stage of the game, even though I got out after. But no, I think it was better to be an NCO. At least you knew what was going on. But you still did your pickets and all that because there was never enough men to lie back and you know, assume the boss role. You know, you had to be a participative leader, in my opinion anyway. But that was the first trip. But the second trip, we become more sort of smarter. And what they used to do was have a duty platoon. And the platoon would just put their webbing on and move to the guns in the perimeter, sleep there all night, and the other two platoons would get on the grog. So that, then the next night you'd swap over. But the first trip, no, we all did it. No one could have a drink. And if you're on duty, you can't have a drink. But the second time, no problems. We all was, one night out of every 3 you'd be on duty, and the other 2 nights you could get drunk.
On your first tour, how many times would you go out on a 30-day patrol?
Oh, not a lot.
It's pretty...
Yeah, pretty rare. Most of them were... Now, I'm not talking about one RER who was with the Americans. I don't know. They might have been different. I don't know how they worked. But the battalion-type soldiers, like in Newey Dad under the task force, you'd probably work on a 14-day might be the longest. Longest, in my opinion, that I've been out. Maybe sometimes things would happen and they'd keep you out there. That wasn't something they liked to do because it's not good on morale. But no, 30 days was a pretty unusual one.
Would they try to follow that up with R&R and RNC?
Well, that's a good point. The first time I was there, I think there would have been a different task force commander, and his idea was 5 days R&R, Bangkok, Philippines, Baguio City, where I got my house, or Taiwan, Hong Kong, Taipei, Hong Kong, or Australia, 5 days, followed by 5 days rest in country in Vung Tau in the 12 months. 5 days in the 12 months at once. Now that was pretty difficult and it wasn't a good idea. The next time I went with 8RAR, it was all smart, you know, it was all souped up. We had a really good task force commander. I think his name was Pearson. I'm not sure whether he was the boss in Saigon or Nui Dat. I think he was Nui Dat. But what he used to do is every he'd rotate the battalion and you'd get 3 days in Vung Tau every 6 weeks or so. So with the RNC in Vung Tau, you come back off an op, you cleaned your gear, put clean clothes on, you have to take your basic weapon and ammunition, and away you'd go. You'd go down, you'd throw all your weapons in the armoury, you'd go out in civvies, because Vung Tau, believe it or not, was where the VC used to go on R&R. And they used to keep a pretty low profile, but they were soldiers like we were soldiers and they'd want the same things. And occasionally you'd see the odd-looking guy that you would know was a VC, but he didn't hang around. And you didn't say much to him. You didn't talk to him at all. And Vung Tau seemed to be an area where no one fought. I'd have loved to have been posted there. I'd had a ball. I'd have probably got stressed about thinking which bar to go to every night. But, however, it would have been... Some blokes break down over Vung Tau. I wished I could have got there. I'd lived there for 2 years. But anyway, consequently, you'd just go off, and as long as, you know, you didn't get into trouble, they didn't care if you didn't come back. You just stayed overnight for 2 nights and got drunk. And then the biggest problem was then getting the company together to go home in the trucks. And the minute you went home, the mongrels would send you out in the field straight away if they could, or the next day. And you'd go to the field the next day on an op and you'd be sweating and sick. And that was the way it went. But things got better for us, yeah.
When you were out on patrols, did you come across VC using water buffaloes in any way?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, we shot up once. We shot up a water buffalo on with a VC wagon with weapons and that.
What had they done with the water buffalo though?
Well, they were using it as when we shot it. Well, we didn't have much time. It just stayed there, unfortunately. But we buried their bodies. We always buried the VC, and it was common knowledge that if you buried them, their soldiers would come along later anyway and rebury them. But the Australian Army, now that's all the units I was with, always had a policy of burying them. It was a quick burial. They didn't get any prayers. There was no padre, just a work party. But they were always buried, and you took anything out of their wallet, like information, but you never took their well, I didn't anyway, take their photos of their wives, or that was always buried in their hands. I made me men bury the wallet in their hands, but yeah, we never, well, I never anyway seen anything untoward happen. I've heard a few things, but yeah.
So with the water buffaloes, did they use that as a bit of a buffer, or?
Oh no, they used to use them sometimes to go around, but that was only on main highway, not main roads, but tracks. I didn't see a lot of water buffaloes used, but I did. I know that one of the companies shot up a water buffalo one time and killed the occupants, which were in VC country, so they're obviously... See, you've got to realise that there was a few different enemies, you know. There was the farmer that used to go out of a night and do his bit, picking up our mines or doing something. Then there was the hardcore soldier that was, that was his job. He was there. But they had the flexibility of mixing with the civilians. Now, it's hard to win a war when you've got sons, husbands that are farmers and also VC, Viet Cong. But when they come down and hit them in 6 RER there, they were hardcore soldiers. Some of them were North Vietnamese with the PIF helmets on. And we used to strike them too. But basically, these soldiers some of them were political officers. They were in the villages, and they would then move out to the jungle, to the camps with all the information, with all the intelligence. It was a pretty hard war to win. They did it in Malaya with the communist CT. It was the same, only it was smaller, and they did it by putting all the people in a compound. You couldn't do that in Vietnam. It was too big. So, yes, it was difficult.
Did you come across any villages when you were out on your patrol where you'd find VC supporters? And you'd have to, you mentioned earlier that you burned some enemy villages.
Oh, yeah, they were enemy villages in the jungle. With the training team, I was in incidents where in the real built-up places, they might find a house that was inhabited by a VC. The mother and father might have had a VC son. We didn't get involved in that. The Vietnamese army blew that up or did whatever they did. We didn't get involved in anything that the army with Vietnamese in villages. We only did... If you're on an operation, and that was fair game, it was enemy territory. But in a village and that, we would always use the Vietnamese. In battalions, you don't see that anyway. Unless you go to fight someone in the village, there's an enemy there. That's different. But when you're living with the people like I did in the half of the second tour, well, that's a different story again, You've got to... You don't do anything. You don't physically touch your prisoner. Outside, when you're on operation, yes, and you're the only ones. But if it's in a village or something and the Vietnamese, you would get them to do everything. You just walk away. It's not good. You can have a My Lai or something, you know what I mean?
Were there times when men would overstep that line?
No, in the field, if you were on operations as a company and platoon and there was no one else there and you got fired on, you would do your drills, put fire down into that area and then sweep it, and whatever was in there, it wasn't your fault. If it was a woman, she was a VC. And, we didn't go out to shoot. We would hate to shoot women and kids, but you don't know what it is when you do a sweep on a village and you're being shot at. You don't know who's in there. So you've got to clear it. But once cleared, no one was ever touched. No one was ever lined up and shot or anything. We don't work like that. They were looked after. They were given cigarettes. They were sent back to the intelligence. We never did that. I have never seen any atrocities done by the Australian Army in my time. I have heard of things, but I have never seen anything done like that. The commanders would stop them. No, they wouldn't do that. Never seen anything. I've seen a few silly little things done, like an enemy's hand might be buried with his finger pointing to Hanoi, but it was never done in my units. But I know of instances where it has been done, but it's not something that most people would do. Or pulling out teeth. I have heard of soldiers pulling the gold teeth out, but it's never happened in any unit I've ever been in. But it has happened, obviously. But it would have been stopped straight away if an officer would have seen it. In my book I talk about it. And I've got a bloke in there that did it and almost got chucked out of the company over it. But I've never witnessed it. It was told to me. No atrocities. Matter of fact, lots of people has gone, you know, you go into a village after you swept it and there's a dead woman. Well, you know, it wouldn't worry me because personally that woman was a VC. But a lot of people, that's why they got post-traumatic stress now, I guess, because they couldn't take that. It'd be different if I went in and seen a kid shot, that might throw me. But I certainly wouldn't if a woman, because a woman's in there, she's got a gun. You don't know. When you do that sweep in the jungle, you don't know who's in there. You can't see. So you can only see them when you're about 2 foot away. So you know what I mean. But no, I'm not saying we were good. We would shoot a wounded bloke, maybe if we had to, if he was firing at us. But normally, if he was rendered useless and he had no weapon, you know, we wouldn't go up and go bang. Not in no unit I've ever seen that. You know, we're pretty humane people. Most of us. There are fools. There are exceptionals. But they were not to a very minority. And they would have been kicked out. They'd have been sent to driving or something, where they couldn't do any harm. That's my experiences. Maybe someone else will tell you different experiences, but I've never seen anything untoward done. I've never let it done, and none of the officers would either, if they seen it.
When you were out on patrols, did you ever have any incidences where you'd kind of run into the enemy as such, where they just slip through the sentries or something like that? Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I can tell you a story about an Aboriginal friend of mine. I believe he's dead now. He was, well, I don't know whether he was half Maori or half Islander or what he was, but he was pretty dark. And he looked like when you're in the jungle, you know, and you got black on you, and you've been out there for 5 or 6 days, your uniform's black too. It's pretty hard to tell. You green go black. And we've had the instance where a VC come up the track and seen this friend of mine and waved to him. And then this bloke looked at him and went bang, you know. And then they've started firing and they've got back out of the position and he got wounded over it because there was more men behind this guy. And they usually used to carry their RP, their rockets, and the minute a bloke fired in front, they put a rocket into the area, and they used to get us with shrapnel, and that's the way they worked. And this guy waved to him, and this bloke, he almost waved back at him, and because it's hard to tell. And then it all broke out. They realised they were enemy, you know. That doesn't happen all the time, but this bloke saying they were all wearing black pyjamas, yeah, he's right, but you know when someone's going to out to get you because you're in an area and they got a gun, and the AK-47 used to stand out pretty well. You could see it was a gun with a big magazine on it. Yeah.
What kind of did you have much contact with the Americans?
Not on the first tour. Oh yes, only the choppers. The chopper crews, yes, you know, we only had contact when we got on. They were always good to us, never tried any smart stuff. No, not really that tour, but the second tour I went to the Australian Army training team and I worked under the Americans. Yeah, I know quite a lot about them, yeah.
So how did you find their difference in attitudes and different approaches that they had?
Well, you know, I worked with a battalion who were in my area. Officers were good, very flexible, very experienced, very good. Take a chance. No, none of this, you know, I can't do this, or the book says that. They didn't play it that way. I like their officers. Their men, well, they were sort of, their tactics were conventional war. And one particular time, I was with a mobile team. I was with my advisors on an operation with the Vietnamese. I worked with the regional force. This is my second tour, halfway through. And the Americans didn't know we were there. And there was a company of them. And I'll tell you something, it was frightening. They rolled us up. They moved quick. And the only thing that saved it, our warrant officer, and he should have been decorated for this, but he didn't get nothing. He went out down the track and yelled out, we're Vietnamese, Australian advisors. And he saved that. But those people rolled us up so fast. That's the way they work. One-on-one in the jungle, probably not as good as us, but however, they do have their different units. You can't sort of specify. A lot of Australians say Yanks are no good. Okay, some of them might look, you know, the transistors and that, but that's the way they're sort of taught in a big war, you know, like Iraq or somewhere. It wouldn't matter if you had a transistor. But basically some of their other units were very good. So I think it's a bit unfair what you hear from Australians about them. No, I don't think they really know. There's some good ones.
Yeah, they don't have a particularly good reputation.
No, that's because Australians don't know. They haven't worked with them. You get their special forces and that sort of thing, very good.
Speaking of special forces, did you ever come in contact with the SAS?
Yes. Yeah, well, they used to secure our LZs, our landing zones, and we'd never see them much. You know, they camouflage themselves pretty well. We've gone to help them in different cases when they were in trouble. I know I walked a very quick 5 hours because they were getting shot at. They were good. They were good.
And what was their reputation?
Good. No problem with them. Excellent. Anybody that knocks the SAS are jealous. Any other soldier. Yeah.
Was that ever something that you might have wanted to go
Yeah, I did.
into? Yeah.
I did. That's how I come to get in the training team, because when my platoon got wiped out in the Long High Hills, there was none of us left, only about 3 or 4, and I was a corporal, and I was trying to go to SAS at that stage. I would have had to come home though, but they sent me to this battalion mobile training team, and then the Australian Army training team took over, and that was a, you know, that was a pretty good thing to get into. So that sort of stopped me. Then I got too old, I think. You got to be young when you go to that. You got to go about 19. You know.
What about Hearts and Minds? Did you come across
Yes.
any of the Hearts and Minds came out? What was that like? What were they doing? What did you see them do?
The WAM program was on all the time. Basically manned by PSYOPs, Psy-War Ops people, probably intelligence. We didn't do it, but they used to drop leaflets. They used to go to villages and, you know, treat the people, same as they're doing in Timor. Get the people on side. Show that we're not going to shoot them or anything like that. Americans did that too. We all did it. We probably were pretty successful. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have gone across on my third tour doing something like that, but I didn't get the chance. The war stopped. But that to me would have been a very nice number, a nice ticket, doing something like that. Wouldn't have been much danger in it, because they went to villages, you know. See, there wasn't danger in every village you went to in Vietnam, you know. Some of these places you could sit down and have a Coke in the local village and cook up your rice from your pack and talk to the locals. especially in the training team. I didn't do that in the battalions. They wouldn't let you in a village. But when I got, with the Vietnamese working, but as I say, battalions never went to villages unless there was an enemy there and they were going to get him. We were in the jungle, we were right out. There was no villages where we were,
Back in Nui Dat, when you had some days off, would you get into town and interact with the locals much?
Oh no, never met locals. The only locals, we had no locals in our camp. That is why the Australian Army do well. They don't have locals working in their camp. Most of your information comes from the locals in the camps. That's where the Americans, I think, fell down a bit. They had civvy employees. It's not a good thing. We did it in Borneo, but the girl used to wash our clothes, but we knew that they were pretty good people. We had intelligence on them. They were even carrying rifles and fighting the Indos for us because they were getting raided, so they're different. No, we certainly didn't have any locals in our camps. The only interaction we had with locals was the girls in Vung Tau or Saigon if you got down there. And we didn't talk about war with them. It was love.
Tell us about love in Saigon.
Oh, well, I didn't get to Saigon much. Love in Vung Tau. Love in Vung Tau was a series of bars with neon lights. They ranged from the Moonlight Bar to the Love Bar. They were filled with beautiful women. French extraction, as the French were there for many years. Some of them were French. Beautiful women, Vietnamese women. And they were hookers because that was a way of getting money, of course. And we were let go to the bars. You had to. At least, soldiers have to go to the bars and drink. And basically they were con men. So they used to sell Vung Tau teas for lots of money and there was nothing in it, only cordial. But they do that everywhere, so it doesn't matter. But the girls were pretty... they didn't try to take our men out and kill them in their houses or anything. Guys used to go end up in the, Vung Tau in the middle of the night somewhere in a shanty town. Nothing ever happened to them because it was a sort of a truce area,
How did it work with the prostitutes?
They were prostitutes.
How did the system work though? Like, would they just be in bars or did they have numbers? Or
No, that's Thailand. No, they have numbers on in Thailand. I don't think they got it here yet. They just stand on the... Oh, there's a couple there. No, bar girls. Girls that help you, get drinks for you and all that. Yeah. Waitresses. And there seems to be lots of them in there. Oh, you could go to massage parlours, I suppose, if you wanted to. I don't know, but bars was normally where the guys went, And you'd get drunk and there'd be Korean soldiers in there, that were on our side. They didn't drink with us. We kept to ourselves. There'd be American Negroes hanging around. It'd be everyone because there was lots of forces there.
Did you find yourself looking after some of the really younger guys?
No. What, on leave? No. I used to get away from them as far as I could because it was bad enough me with them for all the time. No, they were let alone. They just did what they did.
Did you ever give them any advice, especially regarding the prostitutes?
Oh, I give them advice. But, I didn't hang out of their pockets. You don't need that after being together all the time. You'd say to them, be careful. If you met them in the bar, be careful of her. But you'd probably know as much as them anyway about the girl's character, but you thought you knew. But, no, it was on leave, you just learnt, you just did what you did. People didn't pull rank or, the MPs were pretty busy. They used to check bars and that, but they didn't do anything to us unless there was a fight. Local people were okay, only the cowboys. Cowboys are young juveniles like these hoons that run around Redcliffe at night in their cars or wherever. You know what they're like. Young and no brains. We all did it, I suppose. And they would pickpocket you. They'd rip your watch off. They'd change money and give you the wrong wad and of notes. Those were dangerous people, but they were robbing you. They weren't the army or anything. They were just...
Did you come in contact with many of the South Vietnamese young men who could have been fighting?
No. Never had anything to do with men. No. Never talked to anyone. Oh, in the... No, you never had any interaction at all. No.
Some men have said that
they couldn't speak English, most.
Some guys have said that they saw them and kind of thought, well, you know, they could be doing far more beneficial things.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't my problem whether they were working or not. I never even thought about that. I don't know what they did, but everybody was getting a dong from somewhere. A dong's a cent or whatever. I don't know what they were doing. I didn't think like that. That must have been a guy that was... He must be an officer. No, I never thought about that.
So what about your RNC or R&R? Where did you go?
On R&R?
Yeah.
I come back to Australia twice.
How was that coming back to Australia?
It was hard. I wanted to come back. I had a daughter I didn't see. And the second time I come back, she was a bit older than that then. But it was very difficult to leave. 5 days went very quick, I can assure you. But, you know, I'm glad I did it in case I got whacked. You know, you'd never, you know, I mean, if you had the chance to come back and you didn't. Some guys didn't. They felt, some married guys, and I can understand it, they felt that it was better to stay away for the 12 months and to come back and try to do it all over again, you know, to leave. There were people that didn't do it. Not many, but there were a few. Yeah, I did. I come back.
So for your first block, how long, was that 12 months?
No, I did 9. I got out. Joined up again in 3 months.
So coming back from that first time, that was when you said you went to the RSL and all that kind of
No, that was after I joined up in 3 months again. And I was training again to go over. Yeah, that was... So no, I didn't go to... The only time I went to RSLs was on my way through Sydney going home from R&R. And I had a night in Sydney on each time. And I went to... You know, I got around a bit.
Yeah.
I went to the King's Cross RSL, I know that.
So...
They were good. The RSLs were good in Sydney. There was no problem down there. It was only in Brisbane where they were funny. To my... You know, what I struck.
So that... why were you only there for 9 months? How come that was cut shorter?
I took discharge. I was due to get out. My period of 6 years were over. I'd had Malaya, Borneo and Vietnam. And I was going to stay on, but I had such a rugged company and the morale was so low and I got busted back to private. So I thought I'd go home and try to, you know, be a civilian. So I got out. 3 months later I come back in again.
So when that 9 months was up,
yes.
After the first time,
yes.
What was the lead up to the end of that 9 months?
Well, I just got dissatisfied with the company. I'd been busted to private. I didn't think I should have been.
How did that happen?
Well, it's getting a bit personal now, but I offered assault to an officer. Well, if you want to know the story. It was on the first tour. We were, it's in my book anyway. We were moving from an area out on a route to get the armoured personnel carriers back to Nui Dat. It was a bad area. There was mines, there was everything. And it was called the light green. We call the long green the light green. It's near Tui Tik. And the company behind us that was moving in our footsteps, so to speak, were stepping on booby traps. One or two got killed or whatever. And I was the lead section, and the platoon commander was telling me to go through that bamboo. Now, bamboo is heavy stuff. It's not like the bamboo you know here. It's big clumps, right? And if you get, I've got a scar here now, probably gone, but if you get into it, you can't get out of it. And it's easy, we could have dodged it, you know, because it's in clumps. And he'd pulled me back and said, I don't want you to dodge it, I want you to go through it. Well, the scout in front of me, you know, he was ripped to bits, I was ripped to bits. And I just went back and threw me webbing down and said, no. I said, you're a so-and-so. And then I said, I should shoot you, you know, you can't lead men. And then they put me on open arrest in the field, and I was probably about the first Australian soldier to ever go back to Nuidat from an area with nothing, no weapon, no grenades, nothing. They took everything off me, put me under close arrest. So I think I might have the dubious honour of being the only one.
Were you accompanied back?
Oh, we were all in the armoured personnel. My men were told, disarm him. And my men didn't want to do it, because they knew what it was about. And they didn't take my grenades. And I said to the officer, I said, you better take these. And I threw him one. Yeah, it's taboo in the army to throw a grenade, whether it's live or not full pin. I threw it to him. I said, here, take me grenades as well. So he thought I threw a live grenade at him and still had the pin in, you know. So consequently I went on open arrest, I went on tent arrest, I went on close arrest, all sorts of arrests. And then they decided that, I don't know what happened, but I started going out on ops. They put me off one operation, but then they let me go. And I commanded the troops.
What do you mean they let you go? Like, what happened when you got back to...
I come off close arrest to open arrest, and then open arrest to tent arrest, and then I come off that and I was nothing. I was free. And I was a corporal, so I still did my job and took the men out and patrol. Well, they stopped me from one short operation, then they let me go. And that was a time that they tried to get me blown up, I think, to blow this complex up, because I did that, because I was the only one left to do it. And they wanted to leave me in enemy territory. Possibly that's why, but I'm joking. So anyway, I thought I was getting out of it, you know, naive. And then they pulled me up about 4 months, 5 months later. It was a long time, and took me stripes off me. So that was the first tour. So I pulled me discharge. I said, I'll come home. I'm leaving. I don't want to work with you. So the day I left, I abused the company commander and called him all sorts of things in the truck. And they never did a thing. And I come back, got out of the army. Joined up again in 3 months. 2 hooks back.
Was that...
Go again.
Did it ever come up again? Was it problematic joining up again?
No. It was all kept. It was in my records, but I pulled them apart coming home in the plane and threw it in the toilet. They give me my records coming home, and I got all the assault and that, took it all out. Because, you know, in Vietnam, there was a lot of stuff not sent back, you know. That's when people go for medicals and say I was wounded. They say you wasn't wounded, we can't find it. So I was smart enough to pull all the garbage out of my documents, threw it away, come back, got out, joined up again, promoted to temporary corporal. Away I went again.
So is it on your record or not?
Yes, it's on there, but not the details. Just reduced to private. That's all.
So did you have to take a pay cut as well? Does it involve...
Oh yes, it involved a pay cut. It involved a bit of prestige and working me way up again, which didn't take long. Because Vietnam was still in full flight. They needed me, you know. If it was peacetime, they wouldn't have wanted me. They'd have told me to go away. But it was wartime, and they changed their minds in wartime. You know what I mean? It's the government.
So when you had that 3 months out, how did it affect your marriage during that 3 months?
No, I don't think so. My first wife kept pretty detached from the military. I don't think she knew what I was doing half the time. You know, she lived her own life. She had to, because she had a daughter.
But the fact that you couldn't see yourself fitting back into normal civilian life.
All right.
Did that kind of go hand in hand with not being able to fit back into, you know, marriage? That was part of a normal civilian life.
No, she was, with me it was military. I was always in the military. So consequently, she just went on. We didn't I didn't discuss it every night with her. I just made my own decision. We weren't broke. We had money in the bank. You know, everything was all right. So I was getting me DFRDB. I got it paid to me and all that. So when I joined up, I bought all that back, and consequently, after 4 years, I got a good pay, got a superannuation and everything.
Was it a bit of a sigh of relief or something to kind of reach the decision of joining up again?
Oh, well, I think I only got out because I wanted to prove a point. And I did. I got back in again and got promoted. And then I got out again. And I did another trip to Vietnam, and I got out in 3 years, which was the time period. Because I joined for 3, that was 9 all up. And I got out again because I didn't like the way the system treated me. And I beat the system again and come back with more qualifications than I got out with. So I beat the system a few times. I like to do that. I'm still beating them. Because I worked hard for them.
So were you pretty keen, like keeping your eye out on the television, watching television every night, reading the papers about what was happening over there, or did you try and ignore it?
No. I was still there, actually. You know, I had mates there, you know. That's when first time. In between training to go again, well, we never got much time to watch TV because we're always away, you know. So you're there with them all the time, you know. But I guess I just wanted to do that, and that was it.
Yeah, is there anything that stands out, sort of, as being different from your first tour?
Well, yeah, the thing that stood out on this particular tour was possibly the whole scene had changed. We had a different task force commander. Things were now designed to sort of, for a bit of morale with the troops. It was all more organised. But bear in mind, there was 3 battalions there then. There was only 2 on my first tour, or 3 towards the end. So, you know, their workload was a lot more intense. It was just after Long Tan. The situation was more intense. Where on the second tour, we had that province pretty well cleared. And thanks to 6 RER, they sort of got their butts whipped, and they weren't going to come back in like they did. So, you know, they probably made it easy for everybody that ever followed them.
Can you tell us about what happened at Long High Hills?
No. I'll tell you why. What happened, and the reason I'm sitting here now, is, and this happened to me on the first tour too, at the last minute, I was pulled out. I'll tell you what happened with the Long High. We were there in November. It happened on the 28th of February. I had not had arrest. They used to pull a corporal out of the sections and his forward scout in rotation for a rest to look after the internal camp when everybody went out, so he could advise the people that weren't up to everything, the inner details. they'd get him up and say, you know, make sure the claim, you know, all that infantry type stuff. Because the others were infantry, but some of them were not as... And his job was to sort of keep an eye on the camp and you know, in that role. So that happened. I was going out. I had my section lined up, packs on, APCs there, the lot, ramps down. CSM come over and said, you're not going out, get your forward scout, it's your turn to have a rest. I said, why? He said, the corporal that was going out has got into trouble, we want him to go out. What had happened the night before, the officers and sergeants mess, was almost burnt down. So they thought this other corporal had done it, and they wanted to interrogate him and keep him out of the field. Sorry, they wanted to send him into the field to make sure that he paid for it. That's right. And I was released. So I didn't go, and my forward scout didn't go. The platoon sergeant was a guy they brought from another company, support company. He got killed. The platoon commander wasn't there. He was on R&R. The platoon sergeant wasn't there. And the platoon had all the Rios from 5 RER. Been in country 6 months or so. The battalion went home. All landed in that section, in that platoon. So they had almost, well, they had a pretty... My section was run by the 2IC, who got very wounded very badly. A guy called Tony Kingdom, I believe, was running my section. He got wounded terribly, and I felt bad about that. But, you know, I mean, I didn't say I wasn't going out. I was told, you know, you don't, you go, you know. And they were only out about 2 days, and they got hit with the mine, so I can't say what happened, and I'm not going into it because I wasn't there, but I've read what happened. Virtually they were in a mined area. The engineers that were the sappers that was mine clearing, it wasn't their fault, but they were sent into this mined area anyway. It was the hierarchy's fault, but we don't know, you know, I don't know, but I can only talk about what happened. They stepped into the minefield, people got wounded. There was 12 killed and 16 wounded or something. The chopper come down to lift some out. The corporal bringing the chopper in stepped to the right, stepped on another mine, nearly blew the chopper out of the sky. Didn't, luckily. Wounded and killed a couple more. It was terrible. And the bloke that wrote the foreword for my book, Just an Asho, was an Asho. He won a mention in dispatches. A bloke with the name of Dan Casey. Now, these young blokes were really knocked around, and I wasn't there. But what happens in a war zone is if someone gets killed, what you have to do, the people in the platoon left back there, or the company quarter, you know, the company CQ and East Storm, they have to make sure that all the personal possessions are gone through. You don't do this on your own, you do it with someone else so that you're not pinching anything or anything. All the valuables have got to be recorded. All the love letters, if he's married, has got to be thrown away, if he's writing to another woman. His uniforms have got to be thrown away. He gets a brand new uniform, the hat, everything, brand new, badges on it, you rig it out for him. And what comes home to the next of kin is all, you know, his presents for him, his, you know, letters have to be vetted to save embarrassment for him if he's married. And that didn't happen much, that they were going with other women or something, but it can happen. And then one of the guys who was a SIG, infantry SIG, bloke with the name of Gary West, he was had head injuries, and he was sent to the Long Bin Hospital, which was an American hospital. Anyone with head injuries went to the American hospital. He died. So consequently, he had to be identified. So they sent me and me scout to Saigon, and we identified the body. And that was very difficult, because he was a good little bloke. And most of the 5 RER blokes that come over were killed or wounded badly. They got the brunt of it, the Rios, reinforcements, and a few of our blokes too. And the platoon was wiped out. So I missed that.
How did you find out about it?
Oh, radios, they tell you straight away. Nothing's a secret over there, you know. The people tell you, you know, especially us because we were in the platoon, you know.
So what could you and your forward scout do when all this is coming across on the radio?
Oh, we weren't told, but we were too busy. We weren't listening to the radios, but they called us up and told us what was going on. What can you do? We immediately went down and got the 12 dead people with the trunks, laid them out in the lawn or the grass. It wasn't a lawn. And stripped their trunks, made inventories up of their gear, threw their old gear away, burnt it. New uniforms, the right sizes, slash hat, get it all ready. Vetted the letters. And then it was finished.
And then what happens with you two guys that are...
We went to Saigon to have a look at the body. So I said to my scout that night in Saigon, we were supposed to catch the plane back. Wallaby 2 comes back in the afternoon from Saigon. So I said to me forward scout, we'll get drunk. And we won't go back. So so what we did was we were drinking in the Canberra hotel because everyone seconded a hotel and called it, you know. So this was our headquarters. You know, Australian Embassy was in there, I think. It was close. Anyway, I didn't know Saigon much, so we said, well, what we'll do is you ring up and tell them in the Free World building that you've lost me. And I'll ring up on the same phone and tell them I've lost you. So the plane will go. So we did this. Anyway, you wouldn't believe it. We were looking out for MPs, but they sent a guy that was posted in Saigon to check the Canberra out there, and they weren't silly about it. They found us both drunk, you know, and he said, you're the blokes that are lost. And I said, but you're not going to say anything about it, are you? And he said, no, mate, I'm not going to say anything. He was a decent bloke, and no one said anything.
Does he know the situation?
Oh, yeah.
The backstory?
He was sent to get it, to look for us. So he said, no, you're all right. So anyway, consequently, the next day, we give ourselves up at the Free World building, and, you know, they treated us like lepers, put us in the arms code, cleaned all the weapons. I'm a corporal, I'm cleaning weapons. Goes back to Nui Dat. No one met us. We thought the regimental policeman would be there. No, not a one. So I said to Billy Babs, I said, it can't be too bad. Anyway, goes up to the company commander in admin company, because our company was still out, see. It only took one day, this one. And he called me, and he was an old World War II bloke, 8th Army, British Army, good man. And he said, what happened, Corporal? And I told him. And he said, And I said, sir, I said, you charge me, but I said, don't charge the soldier because, you know, I said he was lost. I didn't tell him we did it. He'd have to charge me, see. I told him this story about being lost, and it was too late, so we got on the grog. I said, but don't charge the digger, you know, it wasn't his fault. I got lost, he didn't. And he looked at me, he said, a very dubious story. But he said admonished. So he didn't just let it go. See, if he'd have been a young officer, he'd have probably charged me, I'd have lost me hooks, they'd have lost a section commander, but he didn't. And that was the officer that I take my hat off to. His name was Pritchard, a great officer. He later took the company over and did an outstanding job, but I was gone. This was after the Long Highs, he took that company over. But I had gone, the RSM took me up to a mobile advisory team. The battalions were running these teams, training the Vietnamese. And I had my name in for SAS at the time, and the company commander said, this would be a good job for you. So away I went. He was a good company commander. He said, there's no use in your platoon, they're all gone.
So that was just a coincidence that everything happened the way it did,
Yeah.
time-wise and everything?
Yeah. So the company commander said that your platoon's going to be brought over from D Company. They're going to halve the company or something. So your platoon's null and void. So he said, go up here and have a bit of a, have a look at that. And I did, and it was great, And then we had a guy killed in the rubber in a vehicle on this team. And I was lucky again, because I was always out on patrol, and we used to go with the Vietnamese. And the RSM said, it's your turn to stay today and go out and take the food out. They picked up this American idea of feeding us like the Vietnamese are like American trained. And we're in the area. So I said no, because I didn't like this sergeant. I said, I want to go with you, walking. And he said, well, fair enough. He said, the engineer is going home in a couple of days, so you come out then. The engineer got killed. He had 2 days to go. The sergeant got his ears blown off. Out. Run over a landmine. Initiated landmine. So there was someone on the other end of it. And consequently, we rolled the body up and sent him back on the chopper. And we were sitting there having lunch. And because the world doesn't stop, you got to move on. And we were having lunch in the same area, security out. And Major Beale now, Pat Beale, that I served with in Ingleburn, Borneo, Malaya, comes walking down the track with his green beret on, straight from up at Da Nang, or Pleiku I think he was, where he won his DSO. Come down and he said, do you like it here?
He knew who you were.
Oh yeah, he wanted me, see. He said, do you like this job? And here we just dusted a man off. There was still a bit of bone around. And I said, yeah, I like this job. He said, well, you're the first corporal in the training team. We'll fix it up. You stay here at Bin Bar. And he walked off. I still don't know how he got there. I didn't see any armed guards with him, but he was that sort of guy. So that was it. I went to the Australian Army training team, and I did a couple extra months with them on top of the 6 months, and loved it.
Was there any training that you had to do initially to join those guys?
Yeah, everyone that was on it was doing a course in Australia. But they wanted me to stay there because that team was off the ground, They knew that was the first team. So, yeah, I didn't do a course, but he knew me. And I did my course with the Americans at a Zion, a big American camp. I did the advisors course down there, which was very good.
Were you the only Aussie there?
No, there was a couple from Australia that had been over there before, warrant officers. And there was a couple sergeants. I wasn't the only one, but there was only about 3 or 4 of us or something. Yeah. Lots of Americans, Thais.
Before we go into the AATV stuff, what sort of grieving process is there for the soldiers that have lost half their platoon in the field?
None. None, because there wasn't time, mate. I don't know. Everything I've ever been in, the CO will come out and he'll sit down with you. The Padre comes out and says a prayer. But there's no time to bring psychologists in and people to hold your hand. I mean, that's the way it is. Like in the field on that tour, I had a bloke wounded one night by shrapnel. They were bringing the mortars in too close because that's defensive fire task, so that if the enemy hit you, you got the mortars to bring in. They brought it in a bit close and it wounded a bloke. And, the whole platoon wanted to go and help him. I said, no, you sit down on your, And I went in, I got the medic in there and I walked off. That wasn't my job. Now, I didn't want to hold his hand. The medic was holding his hand. He was giving him morphine. No good me hanging around patting him on the back. He didn't even know I was anyway. And a lot of people didn't like me over that. You know, they said, oh, you should be with your soldier. I said, I got 8 other soldiers here to lead. I want to make sure they're not switched off on the other machine gun, you know, on the machine gun. Not, this bloke's right, the medic's got him. And you can't. You haven't got time to take it personally. You know, you've got to move on. You've got to get... And that's why a lot of people, maybe their psychological makeup is not strong enough to handle that. And post-traumatic stress comes on at a later date. And the post-traumatic stress to me was completely forgetting what I was doing, and anger. Post-traumatic stress for some people is alcohol, complete, you know, losing it all, thinking about the past. But I don't dwell on the past. I don't ever dwell on the past. It's sad. When I get drunk sometimes I dwell on the past, but not much. Because everything that happened to me wasn't my fault. It was the same on the if I had a bloke killed with my negligence, maybe then I would feel bad. I wouldn't like to have that on my shoulder. But nothing ever did, and it was never my fault if anyone got wounded. On the first tour, again I was lucky. We were at a fire support base called the Horseshoe, and we were there for 6 weeks. We rebuilt that one too. We must have been called the Engineer Company, I think. But we rebuilt that, and we did our jobs. Patrolling, ambushing, out on the VPs, you know, checking Knox carts and all that. Had a bit of fun on that. But we were slotted to go down to this Route 23 checkpoint. The company came in, C Company. We were stopped. They said, no, C Company are going out on it. You can go back with the others. We were going to go out on it, be relieved at around 10 o'clock. C Company said, no, we're coming in at first light and we're going to man it. Because they had checked it out. They got hit. Killed 2 guys. Stood over the driver. The VC took his rifle. Shot him to bits. And put ox carts between the vehicles so that the poor old section commander didn't know what was going on. He was in the second vehicle, which he should have been. What could he do? He did what he could. He reacted his section, did a sweep, but it was too late because they put all the cattle in between and the buffaloes. Now that rightly should have been my section, but it wasn't, and I believe they knew that. The drivers were all old. They had been there a while. And I believe that we had created a bit of rapport with them because I didn't go in for calling them nogs and treating them like dogs. I used to treat them pretty, you know, decently. Never give anybody a hard time. Stop people if they did the right thing, and I think it saved our lives because they know. They talk to one another. The VC are their sons, their husbands, you know. So that's what happened to me there. It was close. And they hit the new mob. They didn't hit us. So I was lucky.
So what was the gist of the sort of training you did with the Yanks when you first went into the team?
We did all booby traps, Vietnamese course. We did a language course. It was about a month, I think. Had a ball, you know. They had strippers on the camp, you know, massage parlours, you know. Never seen that before. Beer flowing. Looked after well, you know. What soldiers should get in camp, you know. The training was very good. Most things we knew, like how to set claymores up in banks and how to set booby traps up, rocks in a bin and blow it, you know. All sorts of good stuff. Taught fire control, getting artillery in, all that type of thing. But we knew, most of it we knew. But it was a good course. But I ended up having a bit of an argument with an American officer. I went to sleep in one of their lectures because I was playing it pretty hard, you know. 1 o'clock in the morning, getting home from all this nightlife, you know. I'd never seen it before in my life, you know. I thought it was great. Anyway, I went to sleep in one of his boring lectures, and the young officer bounced me, and I said, I'm not in your army anyway. So after that, I lived with the Thais and ate their food. Thais are good. So I sort of virtually didn't eat with the Americans. I ate with the Thais. So, but it was no problem. No one ever said anything. No one ever put a report in. Nothing. The Australian warrant officers sort of looked at me a little bit, didn't say much. But,
so once you were with the team, where were you based?
At a place called Bin Ba, about 5-6 kilometres from the Australian base. Yeah.
And can you tell us a bit about the sort of work you did with the team?
Yeah. Well, what we did was we went out on all the There was basically there was 2 warrant officers, not necessarily infantry. One was a transport guy, but he'd been in the infantry. He had a military medal from his first tour. He come down off the DMZ or something. He was our boss. Then there was a second WO. There was a medical corps corporal. There was an engineer corporal. And there was 2 infantry corporals. But I don't think we ever had 2 infantry corporals. I think I was the only one. And we'd split up and every night go out on an ambush with them. Any operation, we'd always have a couple blokes with them, advising them, getting fire support for them, giving them illumination in a contact. You know, we used to carry all the illumination rounds and the radio. I virtually carried a radio and a shotgun with illumination, and also my pistol, my 45, sometimes an M16. It was good stuff. Vung Tau every month, whether we liked it or not. Not every 6 weeks. I think they said 3 weeks. And we're looking at one another. Vung Tau every 3 weeks. This is good, you know. First I go to a big American party, and now I'm getting RNC and Vung Tau every 3 weeks. This is good living, you know. I wanted to stay on, but they sent me home.
What did you think of the South Vietnamese soldiers when you first come across them? Because in the support they did at Nui Dat, they didn't have a very good reputation, did they?
No, because soldiers didn't understand them. What I try to tell Australian soldiers was, you come here for 1 year, you switch off, and they did. A lot of people switched off in Vietnam. They had to be hammered. Some of them got wounded because they switched off. You live there. You're born there. You live there. You got war around you for 24 hours a day, and you're 22 years old. Of course they switch off. They know exactly when something's going to happen. Because they're not silly. They've got local intel. They know those villages. I used to go on ambushes with them, and they'd all go to sleep. And, you know, you'd wake up, no one awake. They knew. They knew there was nothing going to happen that night. Other nights you'd go on ambush with them. Not a one was asleep. You knew that there was something going on. They knew. Because they were locals. And that's what the Australian soldier didn't understand. You know, I mean, these people weren't even regulars. They were regulars, but they were doing it 24 hours a day, but they were a low-class regular. They were what they call the regional force. The regional force is only the region soldiers. He just goes in that area. That's why they know. Then there's the PSDF. They're the provincial. They're nothing. You know, they wear black pajamas, and you're on an ambush with them, and you got a straw hat next to you. I mean, he's manning a machine gun. You know, they're really, you know, a little bit worrying. And then you've got the Vietnam ARVN. Well, they're the hardcore soldier. You know, they're the regular soldier. But I think some of their methods were good.
What sort of methods did they have that differed to those of the Australians?
Well, if a bloke had a problem, if there was a soldier had a problem they would belt the section commander in front of the company. Not that I would do that. I wouldn't like to be belted with a stick. But they used to, the company commander would come out and belt the section commander for his man, so it never ever happened again. If a guy had stole or done something like that, or went to sleep on sentry, they would bring the company out, bring the soldier out, give him a grenade, take the pin out of the grenade and say, right, go out the wire, see you in the morning. And at 6 o'clock the next morning, he'd come back shivering with the grenade. If he threw it in the night, he went out again the next night. You know what I mean? He never ever did that again. I don't mind that. It wouldn't work in our army, I suppose, but it worked pretty well there. Good methods. But basically, you know, a lot of people run them down and they're slack and all that. They probably were, but I think people lose sight of the fact that it was their country. They were doing it for 24 hours a day, you know. It's like a policeman, I suppose. A policeman goes out every night on duty and he really doesn't know whether he's going to get shot or not. But he does it because he has to do it, and he just takes it in his stride, and he probably knows the circumstances in the area that well. He knows when to switch on, you know. I equate them with that. There was good ones amongst them.
Was there initial problem when you first went there, trying to earn their trust and that sort of thing? Or them being suspicious of you?
The biggest problem was the thieving. When they didn't respect you, they would thieve off you. And they stole off me, and I was almost shot over this incident. I probably did the wrong thing. Instead of going to the company commander and quietly telling him a bloke stole the raincoat, I had to go at the guy wearing my raincoat. Very silly. And he pulled a M16 on me. And before he could do anything, he was smashed around the head by we had a bodyguard. They always assigned a bloke to watch us, and he was taken down. But that probably put me off on a wrong footing. I shouldn't have done it that way, but I didn't understand. But once they get to know you, and they know you're okay, they don't thieve off you. But they are thieves. But remember, bear in mind, you know, that they didn't have much. They had their wives in the camp. Their wives were in the camp. We got tents up for them. Every night they'd wash their kids, and they're very clean people. And of course it was taboo to look at their wives. Only a fool would do that. You know, that's a quick way of getting shot. None of us did that. I looked at a few, but I didn't look too long. But not bad people when you get to know them. Not bad people at all. I got to speak the lingo, and I made some good friends.
How did working so closely with these South Vietnamese, how did that change your view on the war? Or did it change your view on the war?
No. I was a professional soldier. I went to the war. If it would have been in Africa, I'd have gone to the war. I like to think I was on the right side. We didn't win it, but at least I think that we did a lot for it, I think.
Yeah, they're all home. They've been home for a while. Oh. They'd be nice and quiet.
So, so anyway, no, I still reckon we should have went. I still reckon that the nun in the street shot at about 5 o'clock in the morning in Dat Do with specks of blood on her forehead made me assured that I was doing the right thing, because that's what they were doing to nuns. I'm not a Catholic, but she was trying to do a job and she was shot.
Did you see any atrocities like other than that in your time in Vietnam?
No, I didn't. I did. I didn't see it because I walked away. But I seen the Vietnamese army do a few things that I wouldn't have done. But it was nothing to do with us. We were advisors. We were told to walk away, and we did. But that was their country. They did it.
Was that just considered to be the Asian way that they did those things?
Well, that's the way they worked, and to get information. They went and thumped them in the bush or whatever. That was their problem. That wasn't ours. And it was they didn't kill them or stand over them and I'm sure they put a gun to their head to get the information, but they got the information. So, as long as they got the information, I'm not interested. It wasn't my part of it.
We've heard stories about how even a lot of the South Vietnamese quite liked Ho Chi Minh.
Yes, I'm sure they did. And we liked Ho Chi Minh during the war, because it was Ho Chi Minh that fought with us against the Japanese. Fought long and hard. But after the war, it all turned sour, and we changed. It's the same with this Saddam Hussein. He was showing the Americans the right way. But he became a dictator, and he went bad. Friendships change. It changes in families. You know.
So how long did you spend with the Australian Army training team?
About 7 to 8 months.
Right up to the end of your tour?
Yes. I went over my tour.
Yeah. You went over?
Yeah. Just a month or so.
How did that sort of transpire?
Oh, that's...
Like, did you know that you were going to stay longer, or were you keen
Yeah,
to
well,
go?
they had to get a replacement for me and that was good, you know, there was no problem. Yeah, they got me home as soon as they could.
I'll just stop to the garbage truck. So how did that happen, like, towards the end of your tour? What was happening there when you were ready to come back to Australia? Training up a new bloke and everything?
Oh, no. I might have seen him. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't too much. They went out on... Yeah, that's right. He went out on ambushes with me. That sort of thing. It was all pretty easy. He'd done his course. But you'll find that the people in the training team or the MAT team, you'll find they'll talk differently about the Vietnamese. Your average Australian soldier that was in Nui Dat, they sort of look at him and they say nog. You know, even now there's people that really embarrass me. They're fighting Vietnamese outside, and well, they say they do. I don't think they do. But you know, that's only because they were fixed in that environment. They didn't get out to meet the people, and they thought everyone was a nog and a VC, and there wasn't any good people. These people that come here, believe you me, they must have put up some terrible misery to get in those boats and come here. And a lot of money was paid for a tin boat. So good luck to them, you know. They're good people. I've worked with them. They're okay. So my attitude, you'll find every training team guy. And I mean, I was a very low type of training team guy. I wasn't up the DMZ and done what some of these guys have done, you know. I mean, it was low key. But you'll find that they'll all talk like me. They're pro. They never call Vietnamese nogs or anything like that, because some of their lives have been saved by these guys, and some of them are valiant soldiers. But they knew what was going on, and sometimes they run away because they knew they couldn't win. The advisor had to run with them. Not in my case, but up north. But they'd stop and fight when they knew they had to, you know what I mean? They know all this because it's their country. That's what a lot of people don't understand. But all the advisors understand that.
So how do you compare your second tour to your first tour?
Oh, excellent. It was a good tour. I try to go back again. I was 9 RAR was going, and I asked to be posted not back to 8 RAR but to 9 RAR, who was in Anogra. I was posted there to go back again with them. That's not probably where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Saigon, but I was going to go back with them and do the same thing, or, you know, in a battalion. But I was only back 2 months, and they stopped the war so I could see the writing on the wall, so I went back to 8, to my other battalion, and soldiered with them until we were combined to 8, 9. And after that, they sent me to recruiting, and then I started to get farmed around the area on a career jaunt to become, you know, sergeant, warrant officer, whatever.
Right, so you're back to Australia after your second tour. You said you tried to go again.
I tried to go again, and the war had stopped. I tried to go to Saigon. They didn't want me there. I tried to go back to the training team, and my commanding officer... I went back to 8RAR, and I tried to go back to the training team, and my commanding officer endorsed that I should go back because I was good at it, and they wouldn't send me because people were coming home, you know. It was over.
Can you recall watching the television and seeing the fall of Saigon?
Yeah, I seen it. I watched it.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, well, it was a bit sad, but, you know, the writing was on the wall. You can thank the do-gooders in the United States and Australia and all over the world for us pulling out, because we could have won it.
What about your thoughts on...
Politics stopped it.
a lot of blokes saying that, you know, we stayed south of where we should have been going to fight the war. What did you feel about that sort of thing?
No, we had a province to look after and we cleared it. I don't think we should have went anywhere else. It was our province. It had to be maintained, and we did it pretty well. I think that, you know, if they knew they were going to win, you know, that's the patience. They knew that the foreigner, as I call us, that would get sick of it. They knew the politics of the foreigners would get sick of it, so the soldier would go. It was very sad to hear that the company I worked with, the Vietnamese, when the North come down, I'm led to believe they shot that company commander in front of his soldiers. They shot his wife in front of his soldiers. They shot some of the officers and senior NCOs in the compound in front of the soldiers. I've also heard that anybody that had any interaction with the Australians or Americans were shot. I also heard that every kid that was mestizo is a Filipino word, but who was mixed blood was dug into the sand and the waves come and did the rest. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but a friend of mine who's a policeman went over on a trip to Vietnam and was told that. And he'd been to Vietnam in the war, and he was told that by people.
Have you ever been back to Vietnam?
No.
Would you like to?
Yes, but I just haven't had time with the Philippines. I'd love to go back to Vietnam. I wouldn't go on a tour, and I wouldn't cry in front of the monument in the Bin Bar Rubber and wear my RAR badge. I would like to go back and go silently around on my own and have a look at the old places on my own without a team of people around me. But that's me. Yeah.
You mentioned the RSL sort of thing when you first come home. What about marching on Anzac Days?
Yeah, I march on Anzac Days. I've never had... I've never been one to withdraw myself from the system like some of them do, lock themselves up. It's unhealthy. I've gone through periods where I haven't marched, but you see, I was sort of involved with the army right through until 97, so it wasn't a situation where I could divorce myself. I think a lot of people who says they don't want to know anything about it is probably fooling themselves, and they're making it hard on themselves. Yeah.
What about Long Tan Day, Vietnam Veterans Day?
Yes.
When that first sort of...
Well, I still believe that Vietnam Veteran Day should be 6 RAR at Long Tan and all the attachments that served with them and no one else. But I do go to Vietnam Day to sell me books. I don't go to 6 RAR though because I don't think it would be right. I believe that's 6 RAR and all their attachments, engineers, whoever was with them, Armoured Corps, no outsiders.
You mentioned earlier also about talking to people and how you mostly talk to other veterans.
Mm-hmm.
What about talking to your family and that sort of thing? Have they ever asked, or have you ever...
No.
The thing I'm getting at there is, how did the book thing come about as a result of...
I always wanted to write a book, and I don't like, it's no good writing a book and researching things you don't know, so I wrote it with things I do know. And I did it because most of these books are written by these waffling old officers who have a very good education, but they talk on officers' terms, and you cannot, I don't think a book can be written by an officer about a soldier when he's not far away as a platoon commander. He's on the ground with him, but he still doesn't think like a soldier. And that's one of the reasons I write books, because I write it in my way, which is a colourful way, and I don't sort of talk like an officer, and I think people are enjoying that. Maybe not the officers. I do have officers buy my books, only a few, but a few good ones.
Because some of the criticisms are some of the blokes bottle everything up inside them and don't get it out. Did you find that writing those books helped you?
Yeah. I had as I say, my post-traumatic stress was because I came back with an attitude of not liking. I have never gone into a public bar in a pub since Vietnam. If I go to a bar, and I don't anymore drink here much in Australia because I got kids and I don't have to go out, but if I go anywhere, it's a private bar or it's an RSL or a club, and I could not drink on a Saturday morning with the average people in a pub because, you know, they're Pauline Hanson's group. They listen to everything they're told and repeat it. They'll strike that out of it. But anyway, no, I think that personally, people that have trouble should get a life. They should get a different attitude on life. They should get up and start living. Forget Vietnam. It was something we did, but they've got to bear in mind that the World War II soldiers did more, and there wasn't too much, you know, they didn't get all the help we did. The Korean War veterans didn't get any help at all, I don't think. Certainly not from Veteran Affairs, and we didn't either until we got doctors on our side to help us. The only reason we're getting anything from Veteran Affairs now is a Vietnam veteran is much more vocal than the other veterans. He's a little bit better educated than the other veterans, and he's not frightened to get up and have a go at Veteran Affairs. The poor old fella in World War II would get a rejection, and you always get that. That's the first letter back. And he would say, if they don't want to give it to me, they can stick it. We're a little bit different. We're fighting because we know that the system can be beat. It's the same as the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese knew they'd win it. And we can beat Veteran Affairs if we keep persevering. I think a lot of soldiers have got a lot of problems. I've got problems, but I think a lot of it bring it on themselves because they keep thinking about it. You know, if they wrote a book or if they try to get it out of their minds, they would be 100% better off.
Did you have any problems initially when you first came home?
Yes, with civilians. I had problems with civilians all the way up to 97 until I got out and got a pension. Not every civilian, you know. I mean, I got nothing against the average civilian, but there are a lot of civilians that I can't even stand listening to. They don't know what they're talking about.
So when the Army first put you in recruitment...
Oh, yes, I had it.
Did you must have freaked out a bit about that, did you?
No, I welcomed it with open arms because I'm smart enough to know what to say when I'm talking to school teachers and things like that. And I liked the job. I liked the kids that I was talking to. I liked the people I was recruiting. Obviously, I toned my attitudes down on politics. I didn't say too much because everything you said was recorded and sent to Canberra. Every newspaper article you were in was sent to Canberra and back to recruiting. And you had to be careful of what you said. But I enjoyed the job. It was a step up. I was promoted to sergeant. It was away from the battalions for a while, away from foot slogging, a car to drive, living out of a suitcase all the time, and I liked it.
You mentioned several times about how the wartime army, Australian Army, is so different to the peacetime Australian Army. Can you tell us how you saw that after Vietnam?
Yes, I will. I seen it vividly. I seen units in peacetime, good units, really good units, being hampered in their training by the government cutting money. I've seen governments, and it's both governments, they're doing it now. I've seen them take the money off the soldiers, let them fire 5 rounds at the range. All this, they can't during Timor. They've got to open up their purses. But when it's no war, they don't even want to give you toilet rolls. They check how many ballpoints you use. And then you've got some senior officer telling you, as a warrant officer, we can't do that because we're overspending in our budget. And I used to say to these officers, don't tell soldiers that. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know about your budget. I'm here to train these people. You work your budget out. You've got the degree. If you can't spend that what they've given you wisely, because it is enough, without telling us we're going to fire 5 rounds on the next range practice, you shouldn't be here. But we don't want to know that. We just want to train. And here they are telling corporals about it, telling diggers about it. And the diggers are saying, we're in the army and we can't even train. And that is the way it was getting. And I worked with a reserve. They were getting nothing. And I worked with a ready reserve for 2 years in Enoggera. They got a little bit more because they had to, but they weren't getting much. Everything was on a restricted basis. And it's no good. If you're going to have soldiers, you've got to look after soldiers. And bean counters in the army, colonels, they've got them. They should be politicians. They're in uniform. They watch in every cent. Then you've got people controlling units that's got the pot of gold, who haven't got the ability to spend it wisely. And then they ended up in recruiting one year. They wouldn't let us fly anywhere. We had to drive. At the end of the year, they ended up with something like $70,000 they didn't spend. And the officer was very happy. I've saved $70,000. You know what happened the next budget? We were minus $70,000. That's the morons that are running the military. I'm not sure whether it's the same now. I don't know. But that I cannot stand. And that is one of the reasons that broke my heart in the army. When you can't train a man. You know?
You spoke earlier about how valuable it was to have blokes from the British Army that had actually done stuff.
Yes.
Leading you guys.
Yes.
How did you see that after Vietnam with Vietnam veterans within the Australian Army?
Well, most of those fellas that come across in the late 50s, 60s and did Vietnam. There was lots of them in Vietnam as well.
But how valuable was the Vietnam veteran to the Australian Army after the Vietnam War to teach new blokes coming through?
See what you're talking about. Well, we're nearly all gone now. And I think that, I can give you an example. I served in 89 RAR. 89 RAR was a wonderful battalion. It didn't go to war, but we might be upgraded on the Butterworth. We got I didn't get it because I already had one and they don't give 2 out, but they give us an ASM. I'd been there 3 times. It was a ready reaction in Butterworth, in Penang. And now they've upgraded it to an Australian Service Medal, and they're talking about upgrading it to a Australian Army, an Active Service Medal. Now, if that happens, that's good for those guys. I think our potential was great because we trained all those people And those people have become RSMs, officers, all sorts of things. They've gone on detachments all over the world. We were very valuable to be able to put that into the Australian Army. And any veteran, if he's got any brains and he's got a bit of rank, because some guys don't want to do it and they've got the brains, but they just don't want to be an instructor or something. But anyone's valuable. It doesn't matter whether he's a cook in a cookhouse. He's valuable because he knows how to cook in the field. An engineer knows what it's like to, he'd be getting too old. They wouldn't be in from Vietnam now, but say Somalia. Any of those veterans are really valuable to the system. And if the system doesn't look after them, they deserve things to happen to them. Like the business when they first went to Timor, the accidental discharge, the corporal being shot. That was caused by commanders not knowing to check those soldiers at all times. When you lead men with one up the spout, you've got to check those safety catches all the time. That's what you're being paid for. You don't let them throw them in the back of a vehicle so the safety catch can slide off and you can pick it up and shoot yourself. That's your job. Those commanders wouldn't have the nous to know that because they'd never carried live rounds before on the range, but they never walked around with it. That's where experience comes in. We need all the experience we can get. Timor, Somalia, Rwanda, anyone that's been overseas should be helped to stay and given things in the army, incentives to stay on. They're not doing that.
Did you get to any other countries in your time in the army?
Yes, I got to Malaya, Borneo, Singapore, of course, Thailand, Vietnam, Hawaii, New Zealand, and back again in Butterworth 3 times in Malaya.
So when you think back to the young bloke that wanted to join the army and see the world, do you reckon you accomplished that?
I haven't seen the world like some of the guys have got to England. I did as much as I could do, but I missed a few things. I missed Rhodesia. I put my hand up, but I got a trip to Butterworth instead. I would have liked to gone to Rhodesia. I would have liked to gone to Uganda. They sent a few to Uganda. They took them 5 years or 10 years to give them a medal, but they got an Australian Service Medal. I'd have liked to go on there, but I missed it. I'd have liked to go on to Timor, but I was too old by Army standards. But in all fairness, the Army is a young man's army, and I think veterans of Somalia, Rwanda, well, they wasn't really veterans, but they've seen a hell of a lot. Timor, I think they're still young enough to contribute so much to the army, and if I was a politician, I'd be giving them incentives to stay in, but they never ever handed any incentives out to me to stay in.
Besides, you just mentioning places you would have liked to have gone that you didn't go, have you had any regrets about your career in the army?
No regrets at all. I'd have done everything the same. I got to Warrant Officer Class 2 without being a sportsman. I got to Warrant Officer Class 2 without snivelling to officers. I got to Warrant Officer Class 2 for being a soldier. I can still go out and talk to my soldiers. I have no one punching me when they're drunk. I think I've done a good job. I've got respect. In the reserve I got respect. I've got respect everywhere I went. I've upset a few officers good. Some of them like me. But I wasn't there to impress the officers. I could have been a Warrant Officer Class 1. I was offered it to do the course, but I got out of the regular army. So, no regrets. I haven't done that much in my career, really. I've got no military medals. I've got no mention in dispatches. I was no hero. I did my best. I was there. I commanded men. I didn't get any killed. So I reckon fair enough. That's all I can do.